Today is the 6th of September 2014, and yesterday I watched a video about Edward Lidskalnin. It's a Latvian who did something very unusual, and until now people don't know how he did it. If you never heard about Edward Lidskalnin, look it up on Google. It's a guy who he died in the age of 64 in Florida in 51. He was born in Latvia. At the age of 26, he was supposed to marry a girl, and this girl refused to marry him one day before the wedding. He was very disappointed. He left his country for Canada. He was working as a lumberjack. He never graduated more than four grades at school, and he got a cold and a lumberjack in cold winter in Canada, and became he got tuberculosis. Finally ended up in Florida because it's warmer. It's not known from where he was earning his money. He never married. He was a sickly person, 1.5 meters tall, about 50 kilograms weight, very skinny, small, and kind of weak. He bought a piece of land, a small piece of land, for money nobody knows from where, and this piece of land was beside a quarry of material from like the bottom of the ocean. He was cutting pieces of this material from the quarry, pieces of tons, 10 ton, and one piece of 30 tons. He worked at night alone, didn't hire anybody, and he managed to transfer these pieces and cut it and match it in such a way that they didn't need any mortar, into building a house for himself and some funny furniture outside and whatever. And he wrote a few little books where he did not describe how he did it, except that he managed, and he said to other people, because he arranged visits and was charging 10 cents for a visit, to show his castle inside. People are visiting, wondering, and when they asked him how he could, by himself, without any help of anybody else, with some primitive equipment, which some people think it was just a way to mislead other people, because he didn't do it with this equipment. He said that he knows how to control weight, and he knows how the Egyptian pyramids have been built. And that's all which is known about his invention. But somehow he managed to bring these huge pieces of stone from the quarry to his piece of land, And then when somebody wanted to build a multi-story building beside, he didn't like it. So he hired a truck without a driver and himself transferred all these pieces to another place in Florida, some 19 miles from there, where it can be observed until this day. I haven't been there because I didn't even know about it, and unlikely that I will ever see it. But the point is that a person that graduated 4 grades, even though he was reading voraciously, a lot of he was reading a lot because he was sickly, and even at school he spent very few. And he didn't renew his studies, not because he couldn't afford it, but he said it's too boring to study. Apparently, his level of intelligence was much higher than his peers at school. Anyway, the whole point is that he died, and nobody knows how he managed to, by himself, at night, because he didn't want people to see it, transfer 10 up to 30 tons of stone from one place to another. Even when he transferred the whole thing 19 miles from the original place, and he hired a truck, how he could load on a truck 30 tons? And it was a stone of, it was and is a stone of about 30 tons, and still there you can witness this where it is now. I mean, a truck cannot carry 30 tons. A regular truck, a rented truck. And he somehow managed to do it. So it's quite obvious that he knew how to change the weight of things. And he explained it somehow with the magnets, this way, another way to. This is not the point. My point is that this guy made a tremendous discovery, and nobody knows it until now how it is done. And it would make the life of mankind much more easier and convenient if this discovery would be known. So listening to this and watching this video, I came up with the idea that it's a pity if I do not share my discovery. It is not related to living weights and not related to physics and mathematics, even though I am an electrical engineer by education. It has to do with the workplace. We know now that we are officially in a recession, at a prolonged recession, and opinions of mass media says that we are just about out of it, and more serious people think that we are at the very beginning of it, and we are going in a very deep depression, which is not on one continent, but on the whole Western world. And as I am very active on LinkedIn, I read one of the, a while ago, I read one of the comments on LinkedIn. One guy who is working in a company that deals with risk assessment. I forgot the name of the company, but what hit me that he says that they discovered that there is a very significant incompatibility in the existing system. And this existing system in which we live right now, because of this incompatibility, is getting weaker and weaker. And if it will not be corrected the latest until 2050, the whole world will be overwhelmed by terrorism. It doesn't matter. It doesn't say which terrorism. It doesn't even hint what kind of incompatibility. But I am not aware of any incompatibility in our society that would be so significant, except the one which I discovered at the end of '69. And at the time when I discovered it, I was thinking that it's impossible that I am an electrical engineer would discover such a thing that has nothing to do with engineering. I discovered it after looking into this matter for 15 years before that, even before I graduated engineering. And I was so surprised that it came to me and not to a specialist in human relations that I decided that most likely it's a stupid idea of mine, or it is known and forgotten already by people that are in the profession of dealing with people, human relations. So I went for 2 years evenings after work to the Tel Aviv University and studied several subjects related to human relations, industrial relations, human relations, statistics, a few others. 4 times a week, a lecture every evening. And after that, my wife was so mad that I didn't register, I didn't get my degree there. It wasn't of interest to me. I only wanted to study what I want to study. And 2 years later, I could answer to my 2 questions. To the question that the idea is stupid, the answer was no, it is a great idea. To the question that this idea is known to people of this profession and forgotten already about it, the answer was no. It was never discovered and nobody paid even attention to it, even though it's just in front of everybody's eyes. So when I was already sure that this idea is great, I started to find a place to apply it. I offered to my boss, where I was department manager in a company where I was doing electrical work, and when I started to insist very strongly, he fired me. From there on, I worked on many jobs, and I was actually didn't follow any career in a general sense. I just was grabbing jobs that I could make some income. And it's a long story how I did it and everything, but eventually I found myself, I tried to organize a company that would be working according to the system, and in Israel and Carmel, and money I didn't have, so the government proposed the government needed to give jobs to newcomers, especially engineers from Russia that came in great quantities and didn't have any jobs. So I found 5 engineers that wanted to work according to my principle. Guys from Russia with everybody graduated automobiles and had at least two years of practical work in garages and fixing cars. And I was supposed to organize a company that would refurbish a truck within 5 days to the absolutely new condition, the same model, but the new condition, and that would be very lucrative if it would be done, and very necessary for Israel, because the due for trucks, at least at the time, was 100%. So we could, according to my calculation and the engineer that helped me out of this fight, that actually did the same thing in Russia, he, Lyova Slavinsky, he is almost my neighbor now in Toronto, Canada. We made the calculation that we can do it in 5 days, one truck, 5 days of work, and the cost of it would be at most the cost of a new car in the United States, which would means 50% cost because of the 100% due. It didn't work out. The government didn't give me a penny of money, even though I found a place and found in Carmel, the mayor of Carmel promised me a piece of land that is necessary for that. Anyway, it didn't work out, and my name in Israel was too notorious that I could find any engineering job. I was working part-time in a garage just to help my wife, because she was the only breadwinner at the time. And I decided actually to literally escape from Israel to Canada. I didn't even say to my partners, future potential partners, that I'm leaving, because I was ashamed that I couldn't get the money. So I got to Canada, and my first job was on assembly line of General Motors, where I confirmed that my idea would be great for General Motors. In fact, it was great for any company for profit. So what is actually my idea that I want to share with you? We live in a system which we like to call capitalism. Capitalism is the most, if not the only, just system, if not the only just social economic system in the world. And this system, according to this system, every successful investor of money and or labor, every successful investor is making a profit. So we are grateful to this system, this capitalist system, for all the good things that we have in life. Together with capitalism came industrial revolution, progress in technology, progress in science, in arts and literature and music and everything. Until now, we cannot create any piece of music better than the ones which were created in the 19th century and before. So it's all connected. But there is one thing that capitalism brought with itself. Together with capitalism, another very important step has been made, that slavery in some places and serfdom in other places depending on the place. In Europe it was serfdom, in the United States it was slavery, was replaced by employment. Employment is just as great a step in the mode of labor utilization, I call it, as the change from slavery to serfdom, from serfdom to employment. And there were some modes of labor utilization before that. But every new step of mode of labor utilization brought it with it a tremendous increase in general wealth. Slavery was a great progress because it allowed people to create pyramids, bridges, big roads, something that before slavery couldn't have been done. A family could not do that. Then slavery became uncomfortable for the slave masters, and they decided to give some freedom to their slaves, and became serfdom. At least the family of the serf was separated from the household of the slave master, and the productivity grew tremendously and was a new higher level of wealth both to the worker and to the landlord, the owner of the worker. The landlord was always the worker was the landlord was the owner of the worker in serfdom, just as in slavery the slave master was the owner of the worker, of the slave. But then when the employment came in together with capitalism, a new step forward in health and wealth of the society came in, and the productivity of the workers became higher significantly, and this is from where the wealth came in. And the problem was, and still is, that the employment mode of labor utilization is not a capitalist system. Despite the fact that capitalism brought it, is not a capitalist system. Why? Because in a capitalist system, as I already mentioned, every successful investor of money and or labor is making a profit on his investment of money and or labor. A worker is paid the market value of his labor. Many people discuss that it's not true, and I can discuss it too and prove that it is the market value of labor, but this is not the most important point. The most important point that the profit on labor, according to capitalism, is supposed to go to the laborer, to the worker, to the employee. And it is not. It is going to the owner of the enterprise. Initially, it worked well. Actually, it worked for about 200 years well. For a good reason, not one reason. One reason that the worker that came from the village without a penny, with a shirt on his back and nothing more than that, without a roof over his head, not being able to start a family because he didn't have a penny. He was extremely happy that an employer came in and invited him and gave him a job. Yes, he was working 10, 12, 14 hours 7 days a week. Yes, he didn't have any freedom, in fact, but in theory he had freedom, and he could theoretically leave his employer any time. So employers had to compete for the labor. And all of a sudden he could eat normally. He had a roof over his head. He could even marry and have a family, and the family was his. It didn't belong to anybody else. It's his family. So all this created a tremendous impulse to increase productivity, and this increased productivity raised our society in 200 years to the heights never known before. Now, with time, things changed. There is progress, and the means of production became more costly, or at least as costly, as labor. So originally, if the factory was a manufacturer, which means made by hand everything, and the only means of production were raw materials and some old barn without any convenience, the means of production were a very small amount of the general expenses of the employer. If he would not make money on labor, he just wouldn't be able to survive. Especially that labor was very eager and devoted to the employer and trying to do his best. But gradually, 200 years later, which is about 100 years from now, before now, social conditions started improving. The means of production became more and more expensive because people, in order to work, were supposed to not just go to some barn, but to work in a building with plumbing, electricity, telephones. Advertising became very important because people didn't just buy whatever was produced, they got to promote it. There were different kind of production and all kind of sophistication. So on one side, the means of production became for the employer as expensive or more expensive than labor. And on the other hand, the workers themselves gained insurance, unemployment insurance, welfare, and losing a job, which before was tantamount to slow or maybe not even slow death from cold outside and from sicknesses and without a roof and everything, losing a job became a very inconvenient condition, but not deadly. And the worker started to understand that his labor has value in itself beside the workplace. Originally, the guy who was standing in a street corner waiting for somebody to hire him, he saw that unless somebody hires him, his time is worth nothing. Now an employee understands that first of all, his time is worth something, even though he is not employed. He can enjoy himself, he can take vacations, travel and all this on the money that he already made. And if he doesn't work, he will get for some time unemployment insurance. He will get finally welfare, which is an amount of money that people can somehow survive without danger to die from hunger. So the worker started to understand that his employer is actually a thief that pockets the profit on his labor, on the employee's labor, for himself, instead of, according to capitalism, that this profit will go to the pocket of the employee, of the worker. I am not sure, in fact, I'm sure that the majority of workers don't think in the same categories I'm thinking. Because I spent on this, before I even came up with it, 15 years of thinking, and it would be stupid on my part to think that everybody thinks the same way I do. However, the behavior, this is what's most important, the behavior of the worker at the workplace corresponds to his condition as if he does understand exactly what I'm saying right now, that he is exploited. Because exploitation, in my definition, as opposed to the definition of Karl Marx, is that the employer is pocketing the profit on the labor of his employee, while at the capitalist system, this profit on labor is supposed to go to the laborer, to the source, to the generator of this labor. Now, I can show these two things graphically and by a formula, and I will show it in the next video. In the first part of this video, we were discussing that there were several kinds of modes of labor utilization before employment, which is the today's mode of labor utilization. And we were talking about slavery, and after that came serfdom, and after that came employment. And we were talking about employment not being compatible with capitalism. And the prediction that one company of risk research made, that if we do not correct some incompatibility in today's system, this system will not survive a terrorist attack, the latest at 2050. So we have to correct it in order to avoid the annihilation actually of Western civilization. I cannot say that this incompatibility is the one about which I'm going to talk, but I just don't see another one, and this one looks to me extremely serious, and in my opinion it's likely that this is incompatibility that we'll have to fix. In this part of the video, I want to show you a graphical scheme of the existing system, employment, mode of labor utilization, and the next, compatible with capitalism, mode of labor utilization, which I think it would be nice to call entrepreneurial mode of labor utilization. So I'll show you the difference graphically, and after that I'll show you the difference in a formula which can be used directly for implementing the system. So let's go to the piece of paper and show how it looks. Every enterprise needs two parts of expenses. One expense is in means of production. So let's put this as a square, not square, it's a rectangle. This rectangle is means of production. Means of production is raw materials and all kind of other means of production, which include rent and electricity and telephone and maintenance of the building by outside personnel, advertising, and a few other things. Any expense which excludes labor. Now, means of production by themselves naturally do not produce profit. So if the employer made the expense a monthly expense, a weekly expense, a quarterly expense on means of production, this doesn't create any profit for him. In order for this means of production to generate profit, he needs to pay wages. Now, the relations, the size of wages to means of production, one employer told me, and I'm not sure if it's true or not, but it doesn't matter that much. It's a ballpark figure between 13 and 80%. So let's just say that this is the expenses of means of production, on labor. This is the expense on wages, work, labor. And these workers, for the money they are paid, they're going to operate the means of production, raw materials and all the rest. And if they are failing, they will create a return which is less than expense. Okay? If they are successful, they make a profit. So let's put the profit above this rectangle. This is profit created by the workforce that operates the means of production. Now, what motivates these workers to generate this profit? Okay? The profit, as you can see, goes entirely to the employer. That means there is no incentive for the worker to increase this profit. Now, some profit the employee must generate, because if the employer notices that the employee does not generate any profit, he will fire him. If all the workers will join together and not create any profit at all, the enterprise will go bankrupt and the workers will lose their jobs. This is something they do not want. So, in order to keep the enterprise afloat in the market and keep their jobs intact, the workers have to create some profit. So they do create some profit, and this profit goes to the employer. Now, this system, employment system, we can, okay, but the formula we'll talk later. So, in order for the worker to create the strongest possible incentive to generate profit, what do you think the employer has to do? What I am proposing is to put a line here and keep it holy, not to move it. What this line means is let the worker generate a profit on his labor for himself. and keep this profit. The employer will generate profit on his means of production and keep this profit to himself. So, first of all, is justice, according to capitalism. Capitalism says that every successful investor of money or labor is entitled to the profit on his investment of labor. Before, in the employment mode of labor utilization, the employer was harvesting the profit on his means of production and on the labor of his employees. With the entrepreneurial mode of labor utilization, the next one, the employer is making profit on his means of production, and the workers are making a profit on their labor. This generates an incentive, in my opinion, the strongest incentive, for the worker, the whole workforce as a team, to try this profit to maximize as far as they can. So this way, the profit on labor will go up and will keep going up with the knowledge and of the workforce, with the equipment and so on. But this picture never stays like this. The profit line is always the same line, parallel. So when the workers will increase the means of production, the profit on their labor, automatically they will also increase the profit on means of production. And the increase of the profit on means of production will be times larger than the former profit on the whole, on labor and means of production. So this square will keep on growing, and it will be larger and larger, and it will exceed this profit which was before. This is the essence of the entrepreneurial mode of labor utilization. It is compatible with capitalism and is presented by this simple scheme. Now, this scheme shows the essence of the entrepreneurial mode of labor utilization and the difference between the employment and the entrepreneurial mode of labor utilization, but it doesn't show the actual number, the actual coefficient to multiply the wages in order to this picture to take place in reality. So for that, we'll develop a formula. Let's look at the enterprise, any enterprise, as a pipe. Yeah? A pipe. On the entrance of the pipe, you see raw materials coming in, raw materials, and the outside of out of the pipe comes sales. Okay? Now, if we subtract from sales the raw materials, we'll get what the market pays to the enterprise for the service. Okay? So this little formula actually makes the future formula, which we are going to see in a moment, makes it universal. Because every enterprise is paid for the service. Now, depending on what is actually the raw materials, it can be different. Let's say the raw materials, let's say the enterprise is a store. Then the raw materials is actually all the merchandise that the store owner is buying from suppliers and sells. Yeah? If it is some office, lawyer's office or accountant's office or engineering office, any office that does some calculations or documents, the raw materials that the client is receiving is actually paper and ink which is on this paper. This is the raw materials for an office. And again, the market pays for the service. It can be a mine. If this is a mine, the raw materials is actually the ore that is in the ground, and the owner of the mine is paying to the owner of the property that will allow him to extract the ore from the mine. And this is paid either to a private owner of the property or to the government that owns the property, but this is the raw materials of a mine. So as you see, this little formula makes this whole picture universal. Yeah. Now, in order that the raw materials will be transferred to sales, you have to make two little holes in this pipe and enter into this pipe the price of labor, wages, and means of production. So, in summary, any enterprise can be seen as a pipe. On the entrance of this pipe come raw materials. On the outside, out of the pipe come sales. And the transfer from raw materials to sales is done by labor that operates the means of production, and for both the owner has to pay. So we may look the formula of employment. Yeah. On one side, the employer is getting money from the public for the service, and this is an income, and in order to create that income, he has to pay for labor and for means of production. This ratio at the break-even point is equal to 1, and if it's not a break-even point, there is some gain, and if this gain is above 1, it is a profitable situation, and if it is below 1, it is a losing situation. Okay? Now, this is actually the formula for employment. And every enterprise today, as it uses employment as a mode of labor utilization, is using this formula, in fact, to show how much gain or loss this enterprise makes. Now, this formula corresponds to the previous picture which I wrote to begin with, okay, without this addition. This is the picture which is described by this formula. Okay, this is the picture. Okay, and this is the formula that describes this picture. Now, we want to go to the next mode of labor utilization, which is entrepreneurial mode of labor utilization. And the difference in the formula is only this. You have to multiply W, the wages, by the same number that is the gain. That means the owner of the enterprise will make just as much the same rate of profit as every worker will make on his labor. Here I don't want to make it too complicated. I assume that all the workers accept the entrepreneurial mode of labor utilization. That may not happen at the beginning, and I'm sure it will not happen right away, because it's a voluntary system. In order to take part in this formula, in the entrepreneurial mode of labor utilization, the owner of the enterprise has to offer the employees an option. I call it A option, an option to become responsible for corporate losses. That means if the company loses money, let's say 10% in a certain quarter, the workers have to return to the company 10% of their wages. And because of that, not all the workers will sign it right away, because they will not understand one thing. And what they should understand, and will understand at least after a quarter or two, that if the company was profitable, at least a little bit profitable, before this arrangement, it definitely will be more profitable after that, because there will be no sabotage. Every worker will try to do his best. They will teach each other and try to learn from each other in order to maximize the profitability on their labor. And accordingly, without any supervision, they will multiply the profit of the entire enterprise. So eventually, when all the workers will join the entrepreneurial mode of labor utilization, this will be the formula for calculation of their profit. Now, this formula is a quadratic equation, and we have to solve it in order to actually know how to calculate, because without it, you cannot calculate without finding the solution to this formula. So let's take another page and calculate. So we'll take the formula G, okay, G gain equals to payment for service divided by GW plus C. Okay. So let's solve this quadratic equation. As you may remember from school, the quadratic equation looks like that: ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Yeah. So this is just a reminder how the quadratic equation looks, and we have to make this formula look like that. So we'll multiply both sides by this amount. Yeah. Multiply by this amount. We'll have G squared W, okay, plus C G. This goes to this side. Now S will go to this side. It will become minus S equals 0. So now we see that we received actually a classic quadratic equation, because A is equal W, B is equal C, and C is equal minus S. Okay? And now we know the solution of the quadratic equation. The G equals, okay, 2W minus C plus minus square root C square minus 4 times WS, but S has a minus, so it makes this a plus. So here we close the square, and this is the formula for two roots, actually root 1 and root 2, but we know that one of the roots is not useful to us because it's a minus situation, minus and minus, and I'm not saying that it doesn't make sense. It does make sense, probably for a research institution that is very enthusiastic and losing a lot of money in order to one day make some money. But we are not interested in this part. We're interested only in the one which has a plus. So we'll choose one of the two roots. We'll choose this root, not 1 and 2, just 1. And we'll, because this is only plus, minus doesn't exist, we'll make it something like this, plus 4WS, close the square root, and minus C from here, okay, and divided by 2W. Now, as you see, we don't have G on both sides, just like here. We have it on one side, and this is exactly the formula for entrepreneurial mode of labor utilization that we can use in order to know to multiply the wages of the workers. Besides, okay, I made this formula for the case when every worker joins the system and becomes a worker entrepreneur. But if not all the workers join, we can before all the workers join, we can use a formula like this: G equals to the same thing here, but some workers are inside the system and some workers are outside the system, plus C. Okay? So accordingly, we can solve this problem, this equation. This is also obviously a quadratic equation, and we can use it and solve it, and we'll come to a similar solution. I don't want to make it too complicated, but it's not a problem. It's just purely a high school mathematical problem of the solution of a quadratic equation. That's about what I wanted to say. You can compare. We can again come back and compare this formula of the entrepreneurial mode of utilization with the previous formula of employment, and when we compare them, we see what happens. Here, sorry. This, okay. In the employment, all the gain goes to the employer. With the entrepreneurial mode of utilization, the gain goes at the same rate to the employer and to the workers. Their wages are multiplied by this amount, and I mean only the wages of those workers that take part in the entrepreneurial mode of labor utilization, and those that didn't yet sign up the A option to join the entrepreneurial mode of labor utilization, they stay out of it and they continue being employees just like before. And the ones who join the system are already not employees because they're not exploited. They are workers, entrepreneurs. They invest their labor and receive a profit on their labor. But this profit is not a profit sharing profit that comes from agreement between the management and the workers. It's a direct market profit just of the same kind that the employer is getting from the market for his means of production. Okay? Employer is getting a profit on his, the employer, the employer is getting a profit, making a profit. The employer is making a profit on his means of production, yeah, and the worker is making a profit on his labor. Both at the same rate. Both work in parallel. They want to help each other. For a change, the worker, instead of hating their employer, they actually respect him very deeply because he doesn't exploit them anymore. And they try to help him to make more profit. And he's trying that they will be able to enable them to make more profit by giving him the proper equipment, by arranging the whole company to be as efficient as possible. In this arrangement, you don't need many foremen. Like today, a foreman has under him 8, 9, probably up to 10 and no more workers because he cannot manage them. They don't want to actually invest too much labor. With the new system, every worker wants to invest as much labor as possible and helping each other and to the employer to invest as much as possible in the most efficient way. And for that purpose, and in this situation, the management structure becomes flat because the number of intermediate bosses collapses. Everybody wants to do his best, and every peer is trying that his other peer will do his best and helps him to do so. And everybody who doesn't know will learn from one who knows. It's a tremendous saving. Not only, this is not a system to make workers to work harder, not at all. They will be happy to work. They come to work like to a picnic because they want to come. It's a pleasant place to be at such a workplace because everybody is trying to help each other to be more efficient and learning from each other and teaching each other. And everybody is trying to help the management and the bosses in particular to make more profit. And obviously the boss is trying that to oblige and to help his worker to create more profit because by working better, smarter, and making more profit on their labor, they generate a profit for him on his means of production. So I think this is a very important solution, and I'm happy to propagate it. You can look up my my website, which is profitonjob.com. Profitonjob.com is one word. I just made it separate in order to show that this is different words. But actually, profitonjob is one word, .com. www.profitonjob.com. If you go to this website, it will also direct you to my book, which is Smiling for Profit. Smiling for Profit, and it is available on Amazon.com. Okay? Thank you for your patience. Bye. So now let's summarize this former 2 videos. And what I want to say that I offer to every employer to take a look at this approach, and this will allow you to make your enterprise much more profitable without much effort, much less effort than before, and definitely without any outlay of extra money or extra effort to introduce a new system. And you will have a loyal workforce that will try their best to maximize the profitability just like you do. And in the whole society will change when many and eventually all enterprises will change from employment mode of labor utilization to the entrepreneurial mode of labor utilization, because the workers will make much more money, just like you will make much more money. There will be much more demand in the market. Demand will create jobs. Workers will be more sure that they will not stay jobless, so they will spend more. And when they spend more, the extra demand will create extra jobs. The government will get more income from taxes. The people will not go into debt that deeply or not at all. The government will pay off its national debts. The level of wealth in society will grow, and we'll never have recessions. So this is a correction to the discrepancy, incompatibility that exists in our society, that without it, it becomes weaker and weaker, and it is in danger to lose its freedom and be overtaken by terrorism. I hope it's strong enough. Bye.